Based on my experience and research, I think the key thing about learning from failures and near misses is A, careful observation of what has happened, and B, seeking remediation to address that problem. And in the 30 sort of years or so that I've been working on this project, the thing that I've discovered is that quite often in law enforcement, security and military, the key issue is not making an erroneous judgment, but actually failing to act. It's quite often what the police are presented with are problems where both options, or the options that are available to them, all look problematic. And it's actually quite normal to not want to take any of those options. So if you have an A option and a B option, they both look bad, quite often what people will do is pick neither option, but that's problematic. You have to calculate the least worst first option. So that really is the issue, and that is what I'll be talking about today, this process of decision inertia rather than decision error, and that has been common in law enforcement. The thing is, in policing, if you look at the last 20, 30 years of policing, nearly always what the police are kind of beaten up over in the press or in independent police complaint inquiries is a failure to act. It's not that they've done something wrong, it's much more often that they haven't acted at all or in time. The key thing is about training. You can't just train for the last worst event that's happened. You have to think about the next problem that you may encounter, and it might be improbable, it might be a low chance problem that you're encountering, but you have to prepare for the worst. So I think the key thing that police, emergency services, military and security can do is A, invest in training. It doesn't need to be really ridiculously expensive training. It's all about creating narratives and scenarios that are going to test people. So the old sort of maxim that I think the Marines use, which is train hard and fight easy. We are in the business, and have been for the last few years, of designing scenarios and little thought experiments for police and our other emergency services that are going to test them under pressure and test conditions where they're not just working off policy and procedure, but test them, their creative ability to adapt under pressure, and quite often bring together two options that look bad for them, and they have to calculate very quickly between those two options. So my main advice would be thinking about training, but thinking about clear structured training where you know what you're testing and why you're testing it, and that can't just be a test of policy and procedure. It has to be a test of people's resilience, their creative thinking, their ability to anticipate and adapt. And doing that regularly is key, because quite often from our experience in the past, the police have spent quite a lot of time and money on very large scale exercises or very complex technical solutions to training, but actually short, punchy 15 to 20 minute training events where you think carefully about the narrative and the scenario that you're constructing, that is the route to improving thinking under pressure. And you know, you and I, normal people on the street, aren't often presented with those difficult problems where they've got to calculate, what am I prepared to lose here? But those are the situations, those are the scenarios, those are the thought experiments under training that you need to expose the emergency services to so that they can improve their ability to think under pressure. What my experience of the police has been for the last 20, 30 years is they will do one training event a year, and it'll be an all singing, all dancing, very expensive, semi-live simulation. And the analogy I always give is if I want to teach you how to play the violin, do I ask you to play for a week and then not touch that violin for another year? Or do I get you to commit to 15 minutes practice 3 times a week? And that's the difference. You get this performance decrement where they might improve the week after training, but 6 weeks later, you start to forget the learning. So it's doing a little bit every day or every other day. It's the repetition, the consistency, and thinking about the structure that you're giving to our emergency service responders. Not just, we'll just design a scenario. It needs to be thought through. You need to know what you're measuring, what you're testing, why you're testing it, and how you track performance. But dosage effects are important. You've got to consider dosage effects when you're trying to improve thinking.